Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. For everyone can see and few can feel, wrote Machiavelli in The Prince. He wasn't describing manipulation tactics for courtship, he was revealing the uncomfortable truth about human perception itself, how we construct reality through surface impressions, while the deeper currents of psychology flow invisibly beneath. You walk into a room and something shifts. Not because of what you said, not because of grand gestures or obvious charm, but because of something far more subtle and profound. The way certain people seem to occupy space differently, how they create an atmosphere that makes others lean in, study them, try to decode what makes them different. This isn't about pickup lines or performative confidence. This is about understanding the psychological mechanisms that govern how human beings process presence, power, and authenticity. What Machiavelli understood 5 centuries ago, modern neuroscience now confirms. We make judgments about others within milliseconds, processing thousands of microsignals before conscious thought even engages. The difference between someone who fades into the background and someone who becomes memorable isn't what they do, it's what they don't do. It's the strategic use of psychological space, the careful orchestration of attention, the mastery of what researchers call social calibration. If you're drawn to understanding these deeper mechanisms of human psychology, subscribe to explore more of these hidden truths about how we really connect with each other. Now, let's examine what actually happens in those crucial moments when perception shifts, when someone goes from invisible to unforgettable. The first secret lies in understanding what psychologists call strategic inconsistency. You've been taught that consistency is attractive, that being predictable builds trust. But here's what the research actually shows. Predictability creates psychological habituation. When someone's responses become entirely foreseeable, the brain stops paying attention. It's like how you stop hearing the hum of your refrigerator after a few minutes. Familiarity doesn't breed contempt, it breeds invisibility. Watch someone who commands attention in any room. They don't maintain the same energy, the same tone, the same emotional temperature throughout every interaction. They create what attachment theorists call intermittent reinforcement patterns. One moment they're deeply engaged, asking questions that make you feel like the most interesting person in the world. The next moment they're checking their phone, their attention pulled elsewhere, creating a subtle but powerful psychological vacuum. This isn't about being manipulative or playing games. It's about understanding that human attention is finite and precious. And when someone treats yours as valuable enough to compete for, something primal activates. Mirror neurons fire differently when we encounter someone whose interest in us feels earned rather than given freely. The brain interprets this pattern as significance. If their attention is selective, then receiving it must mean something. But here's where most people misunderstand the psychology completely. They think this means being aloof or distant or deliberately withholding affection. That's not strategic inconsistency. That's just emotional unavailability. And it creates anxiety, not attraction. True strategic inconsistency comes from authentic engagement followed by authentic disengagement. You're fully present when you're present and genuinely occupied when you're occupied. No performance, no calculation, just the natural rhythm of someone whose inner world is rich enough that external validation isn't their primary source of stimulation. The second secret involves what researchers call narrative disruption. Most people approach interactions with women by trying to fit into expected patterns, playing the role of the interested guy, the funny guy, the successful guy. They think attraction is about meeting expectations perfectly. But psychological studies on memory and attention reveal something counterintuitive. We remember disruptions, not confirmations. Think about your most memorable conversations. They weren't the ones where someone said exactly what you expected them to say. They were the moments when someone surprised you, challenged your assumptions, or revealed something that didn't fit your initial categorization of them. When you meet someone and they respond to your small talk about work by saying, "I think most people use their careers to avoid themselves," something in your brain stops and pays attention. Not because it's shocking, but because it's unexpected depth in an expected space. This is why the most magnetic people often seem to exist slightly outside conventional social frameworks. They don't violate social norms, but they don't seem constrained by them either. They might be talking about philosophy while everyone else discusses weekend plans. Or they might ask genuinely curious questions about your childhood, while others stick to surface level topics about current events. They create what cognitive psychologists call schema violations, moments when your brain has to work a little harder to process and categorize the information it's receiving. But here's the crucial distinction. This isn't about being contrarian or deliberately difficult or trying to shock people with edgy opinions. That's just social performance, and people sense the artifice immediately. True narrative disruption comes from genuine curiosity about deeper layers of human experience. When you ask someone, what's something you believed as a child that you wish you could believe again, instead of, what do you do for work? You're not trying to be different. You're genuinely interested in who they are beneath their social presentation. Share in the comments if you've ever experienced this dynamic, either as someone who disrupted expectations or as someone whose expectations were disrupted. The psychological impact of these moments reveals something profound about how we really connect with each other. The third secret centers on what Machiavelli called the art of strategic revelation. In human psychology, information becomes precious when it feels earned rather than freely given. Think about the difference between someone who shares their entire life story within the first hour of meeting them and someone who reveals aspects of themselves gradually, naturally, in response to the specific texture of each conversation. This isn't about being secretive or mysterious for the sake of mystery. That's manipulation. This is about understanding that intimacy is built through progressive disclosure, through the gradual unveiling of layers that make someone feel like they're discovering you rather than having you present it to them. When someone shares something personal and meaningful, but only after the conversation has earned that level of depth, the psychological impact is completely different than if they'd opened with the same information. Research in social psychology shows that we value information more highly when we've invested effort in obtaining it. This is called the investment effect, and it applies to everything from material objects to emotional connections. When someone reveals that they paint watercolors, but only after you've asked the right questions and shown genuine interest in their creative process, that information carries weight. It feels like a privilege to receive it. But strategic revelation isn't just about timing, it's about relevance. The most compelling people don't share random personal details. They share the pieces of themselves that connect directly to the moment, the conversation, the energy between you. They might mention their fear of heights while you're both looking up at a tall building, or talk about their relationship with their sister after you've shared something about your own family dynamics. The revelation feels natural, contextual, like a door opening at precisely the moment you're ready to walk through it. This creates what attachment theorists call earned secure attachment in real time. The other person begins to feel like they have special access to you, not because you're being exclusive or withholding from others, but because the conversation between you two has created a unique space for deeper truth. They're not just learning facts about you, they're discovering aspects of you that feel specific to your connection. The fourth secret involves understanding what psychologists call emotional amplification through contrast. This might be the most misunderstood aspect of human psychology because it seems to contradict everything we're taught about being consistent and reliable. But neuroscience reveals that our brains are designed to notice and remember emotional transitions more than emotional constants. Consider the difference between someone who maintains the same warm, friendly energy throughout every interaction and someone whose warmth feels more significant because you've also experienced their seriousness, their intensity, their moments of quiet contemplation. The warmth doesn't feel better because it's contrasted with negativity. It feels more real because it's contrasted with complexity. This is why the most magnetic people often have what seems like contradictory qualities. They might be incredibly ambitious, but also deeply philosophical about the meaninglessness of achievement. They might be socially confident, but also comfortable with solitude. They might be passionate about their work, but also quick to laugh at themselves when they take it too seriously. These aren't contradictions. They're the natural complexity of a fully developed human being. But here's where most people go wrong with this concept. They think emotional contrast means being moody, unpredictable, or hot and cold. That's not psychology. That's emotional instability, and it creates anxiety rather than attraction. True emotional amplification comes from accessing different aspects of your authentic self depending on what the moment calls for. You're not performing different emotions. You're allowing different facets of your genuine personality to surface based on the natural flow of the interaction. When you can shift from playful banter to philosophical depth to genuine vulnerability within the same conversation, something powerful happens in the other person's mind. Their brain has to work harder to categorize you, which means they think about you more. But more importantly, they begin to sense that you contain multitudes, that knowing you would be a continuous process of discovery rather than a simple equation solved quickly. The fifth and most profound secret relates to what Machiavelli understood about power, that true influence comes not from dominating others, but from appearing undominated yourself. In modern psychological terms, this translates to what researchers call internal locus of control, the genuine sense that your emotional state, your sense of worth, and your life direction come from internal rather than external sources. This is perhaps the most attractive quality a human being can possess, and also the most difficult to fake. When someone seems genuinely unattached to outcomes, when they can invest fully in a conversation or connection while remaining psychologically free to walk away if it doesn't serve them, something primal responds in the observer. Not because they want to be rejected, but because they recognize the presence of someone who belongs to themselves. Most people approach interactions with women from a place of subtle neediness. They might hide it well, but underneath the confident exterior is a quiet desperation for validation, acceptance, or romantic success. This energy is impossible to completely mask because it influences everything: the way you listen, the way you respond to tests or challenges, the way you interpret neutral behaviors as signs of interest or disinterest. But when you encounter someone who seems genuinely complete within themselves, who engages with you because they find you interesting rather than because they need something from you, the psychological effect is profound. Your own insecurities feel less important because they're not being triggered by someone else's hidden agenda. You can relax into the interaction because you sense that this person isn't trying to get anything from you. They're simply enjoying the process of human connection. This quality can't be performed or strategized into existence. It has to be developed through the patient work of building a life so meaningful to you that external validation becomes nice to receive, but not necessary for your sense of self. It comes from cultivating interest, relationships, and purposes that fulfill you independently of romantic success. Like this video if you're beginning to recognize the difference between strategic behavior and genuine psychological development. The distinction matters more than most people realize. What makes these insights Machiavellian isn't that they're manipulative. It's that they acknowledge the political reality of human psychology. We do make judgments quickly. We are influenced by things we're not consciously aware of. We do respond to certain patterns of behavior in predictable ways. Pretending these realities don't exist doesn't make you more ethical. It just makes you less effective at navigating social dynamics. But understanding these patterns gives you a choice. You can use this knowledge to develop genuine attractiveness, the kind that comes from being psychologically interesting, emotionally complex, personally secure, and socially calibrated. Or you can ignore these realities and wonder why your best intentions don't always translate into the connections you want. The uncomfortable truth is that attraction isn't primarily about being a good person, though being a good person is important. Attraction is about being a compelling person. And compelling people understand that humans are complex psychological creatures who respond to subtle patterns of attention, mystery, emotional contrast, and authentic self-possession. When you walk into a room now, you might notice these dynamics playing out everywhere. You'll see who commands attention and who fades into the background. You'll recognize the difference between someone performing confidence and someone genuinely possessing it. You'll understand why certain conversations stay with you for days while others disappear immediately from memory. This isn't about becoming someone else or adopting a persona that doesn't fit you. It's about understanding the psychological mechanisms that govern human attraction so you can show up as the most compelling version of who you already are. It's about recognizing that authenticity without awareness is often just unconscious performance, while awareness without authenticity is conscious manipulation. The real secret isn't in any particular technique or strategy. It's in developing yourself into someone whose natural way of being naturally creates these psychological dynamics. When you're genuinely interesting, you don't have to try to be mysterious. When you're genuinely secure, You don't have to perform confidence. When you're genuinely engaged with life, you don't have to fake passion. Machiavelli wrote about power because he understood that pretending power doesn't exist doesn't make it go away. It just makes you less conscious of how it operates. The same is true of attraction. These psychological patterns exist whether you acknowledge them or not. The question is whether you'll develop the awareness to work with them consciously or remain unconscious of them while they work on you. Perhaps what makes someone truly magnetic isn't that they've mastered techniques for creating attraction, but that they've done the deeper work of becoming someone worth being attracted to. Someone whose presence suggests depths worth exploring, whose attention feels valuable because they clearly have options, whose emotional world is rich enough that they can offer genuine engagement without needing anything in return. The most profound realization might be that these secrets aren't really about making women see you differently at all. They're about becoming someone who sees themselves clearly enough to show up authentically in a world that mostly rewards performance. And maybe that's the real Machiavellian insight, that the most powerful thing you can do is stop trying to gain power over others and start exercising power over yourself.